When I woke up that morning, I didn't expect anything grand. I never did. But I expected him to remember. I expected my son to call me, maybe send a message, maybe just say the words he'd said every year since he learned how to speak. Happy birthday, Mom. That's all I needed. Just those 3 words. But my phone stayed silent. I sat at the edge of my bed, holding it in my hands, waiting. The screen was blank. No missed calls. No messages. Nothing. I told myself he was probably busy. Maybe he was still asleep. Maybe he'd call later. I made excuses for him even before the day had truly started. I went to the kitchen and made myself tea. The house was quiet. It had been quiet for a long time now. Ever since he got married and moved out, the silence had become my companion. I didn't mind it most days. But that morning, the silence felt heavier. It pressed against my chest. It made the walls seem closer. I looked at the calendar on the wall. There it was. My birthday. Circled in red marker. I had circled it myself weeks ago, not because I needed a reminder, but because I thought maybe he would see it when he visited. But he hadn't visited in a while. I drank my tea slowly. I watched the clock. I waited. And I kept waiting. By afternoon, I started making more excuses. He's working. He's with his wife. He'll remember by evening. He always does. But the hours passed like heavy footsteps. Each one slower than the last. Each one quieter than the one before. When the sun began to set, I finally allowed myself to accept it. My son forgot my birthday. For the first time in 32 years, the boy I raised, the boy I gave everything to, the boy who once saved his lunch money to buy me a card, forgot the day I was born. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat by the window and watched the sky turn orange, then purple, then black. Let me tell you about my son. His name is Daniel. I named him after my father, a man who taught me what love looked like. Daniel was my only child. I raised him by myself after his father left when he was just 3 years old. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I was doing enough. There were days I worked 2 jobs just to make sure he had everything he needed. But I never let him see me break. I smiled for him. I sang for him. I made sure his childhood was filled with warmth even when my own heart felt cold. Daniel was a sweet boy. He had big brown eyes that always looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. He would draw me pictures at school and bring them home folded carefully in his backpack. He would save his allowance to buy me flowers on Mother's Day. He never forgot. Not once. He knew I didn't like loud noises. He knew I loved tulips more than roses. He knew that when I was sad, I would sit by the window and stare outside without saying a word. And when that happened, he would come sit next to me. He wouldn't ask questions. He would just hold my hand. That was Daniel. My boy. My whole world. As he grew older, our bond only deepened. When he was in high school, he would tell me about his dreams. He wanted to be an engineer. He wanted to build bridges, he said. Big, strong bridges that connected people. I thought that was beautiful. I told him he could do anything he set his mind to. And he did. He worked hard. He studied late into the night. I would bring him tea and sit with him while he solved equations I didn't understand. He got into a good university. I was so proud. I cried the day he got his acceptance letter. He hugged me tight and said, "I did this for you, Mom." I believed him. Every word. Even when he went away to college, he called me every week. Sometimes twice a week. He would tell me about his classes, his friends, his plans for the future. He never let the distance make us strangers. I missed him terribly, but I was happy. I was happy because he was becoming the man I always knew he could be. Then he graduated. He got a job. A good job in the city. He moved into a small apartment, but he still came home on weekends. He still called. He still remembered all the little things. My birthday. Mother's Day. The anniversary of my father's passing. He never missed a single one. I thought it would always be that way. I thought no matter how far he went, no matter how busy life became, we would always have this. This closeness. This understanding. This love that didn't need words to prove itself. And then he met her. Her name was Melissa. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. She had long dark hair that fell in perfect waves down her back. She had a smile that could light up a room. And Daniel, my sweet Daniel, was completely smitten from the very first day he told me about her. I could hear it in his voice. The excitement. The hope. The nervousness. He talked about her the way young men talk about the sun after a long winter. I was happy for him. Truly. I wanted him to find someone who made him smile. Someone who would love him the way he deserved to be loved. So when he brought her home to meet me, I welcomed her with open arms. I cooked his favorite meal. I set the table with the good dishes. I wanted her to feel comfortable. I wanted her to know that she was stepping into a home filled with love. She was polite. Very polite. She called me Mrs. Carter even though I told her to call me by my first name. She complimented my cooking. She laughed at my stories. She held Daniel's hand across the table and looked at him with such affection that I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Everything seemed perfect. Daniel looked happy. Happier than I'd seen him in years. I thought, this is good. This is exactly what he needs. They dated for 2 years. During that time, Daniel still called me regularly. But I started noticing small changes. The calls became a little shorter. The visits became a little less frequent. He would say things like, Melissa and I have plans this weekend, Mom, or I'm sorry, we can't make it for dinner. Melissa's family is expecting us. I told myself it was normal. He was building a life with someone. He was learning to balance his time. I didn't want to be the kind of mother who complained. I didn't want to be a burden. So I smiled and said, of course, sweetheart. I understand. And I did understand. Or at least I tried to. Then one evening, Daniel called me. His voice was filled with excitement. He said, Mom, I have something important to tell you. I'm going to ask Melissa to marry me. I felt my heart swell and break at the same time. I was so happy for him. But I also felt something else. Something I couldn't quite name. It felt like the beginning of an ending. Like I was about to lose him in a way I wasn't ready for. But I pushed those feelings down. I said all the right things. I told him how proud I was. I told him she was a lucky woman. I told him I couldn't wait to see him start this new chapter of his life. And I meant it. I truly did. The wedding was 6 months later. It was beautiful. Everything a wedding should be. There were flowers everywhere. White roses and lilies covered every table. The ceremony was held in a grand hall with crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Soft music played as guests arrived in their finest clothes. I sat in the front row, right where mothers are supposed to sit. I wore a navy blue dress that Daniel had helped me pick out months before. He said I looked beautiful. He kissed my cheek and told me not to cry before the ceremony even started. But I couldn't help it. Watching your only child get married does something to your heart that nothing else can. When Daniel stood at the altar waiting for Melissa, I saw that little boy again. The one who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who made me birthday cards with crayons and glitter. The one who promised he would always take care of me when he grew up. I cried through the entire ceremony. I cried when Melissa walked down the aisle. I cried when they exchanged vows. I cried when Daniel kissed his new wife. People probably thought I was crying from happiness. And I was. But I was also crying because I knew things would never be the same again. After the wedding, everything changed. Slowly at first. So slowly I almost didn't notice. Daniel stopped coming home on weekends. When I asked him about it, he said they were busy settling into their new apartment. He said Melissa was decorating and they had a lot to do. I understood. Newlyweds need time together. I didn't want to intrude. But then the phone calls started changing too. At first, Daniel would still call me once a week. We would talk for maybe 20 minutes. He would tell me about work, about their apartment, about the new furniture they bought. But his voice sounded different, distant, like he was talking to me while thinking about something else. Then the weekly calls became every 2 weeks, then once a month. And sometimes he wouldn't call at all. I would be the one reaching out. I would be the one asking how he was doing. And even then, he rarely picked up on the first try. When he did answer, conversations were short. He would say things like, "Mom, I'm really busy right now. Can I call you back later?" But he never did call back. I would wait by the phone for hours, sometimes for days, but it would stay silent. I started texting him instead. Simple messages. "Hope you're having a good day." Or, "Thinking of you, sweetheart." Sometimes he would reply with a quick, "Thanks, Mom," or a thumbs up emoji. Other times, he wouldn't respond at all. I told myself he was just adjusting to married life. That it takes time to balance everything. A new wife. A demanding job. A home to take care of. I made excuses for him because that's what mothers do. We protect our children even when they're the ones hurting us. But deep down, I felt it. That slow, creeping feeling of being forgotten. Like I was fading from his life one day at a time. Like I was becoming optional instead of essential. I tried talking to my sister about it. She lived 2 hours away, but we spoke on the phone regularly. I told her I was worried. I told her Daniel didn't call anymore. She said, "Give him time. Men get consumed by their wives in the beginning. He'll come back around." But months passed, and he didn't come back around. I started noticing other things too. When I did manage to reach him, I could hear Melissa in the background. Sometimes she would say something and Daniel would laugh. Other times, I would hear her voice getting closer and suddenly Daniel would say he had to go. It happened more than once. More than twice. It became a pattern. One time, I called him on a Sunday afternoon. He answered, and I could tell he was distracted. I asked if he wanted to come over for dinner that week. I said I would make his favorite meal. Pot roast with mashed potatoes. The meal I made for him every birthday since he was 5 years old. He hesitated. Then he said, "I'll have to check with Melissa, Mom. She usually plans our meals for the week." Something in my chest tightened. I said, "Of course. Just let me know." He never let me know. I invited them for Thanksgiving. I called him 3 weeks in advance. I wanted to make sure they didn't have other plans. Daniel said they would try to make it. He said he would confirm closer to the date. But when Thanksgiving week arrived and I called to ask what time they would come, he said, "Actually, Mom, we're going to Melissa's parents' house this year. Her mom really wanted us there." I said, "Oh, okay, that's fine." But it wasn't fine. It hurt. It hurt in a way I didn't expect. Christmas was the same. They went to Melissa's family. New Year's came and went. No call. No visit. I sent Daniel a care package with homemade cookies and a sweater I knitted for him. He texted me 2 weeks later saying, "Got the package. Thanks." That was it. 4 words. I started wondering if I had done something wrong. If I had said something that upset him. If Melissa didn't like me and was keeping him away. I replayed every conversation. Every visit. Every moment. But I couldn't find anything. Then my birthday came. And that's when I realized the truth. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had simply stopped being a priority. I had become background noise in my son's new life. And the boy who once remembered everything about me had finally forgotten. The day after my birthday, I woke up feeling hollow. I had spent the entire evening before sitting by the window, watching the darkness settle over the neighborhood. I kept my phone next to me the whole time. I kept hoping that maybe he would remember at the last minute. That maybe he would call just before midnight and apologize for being late. But midnight came and went. And my phone never rang. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept waking up every few hours, reaching for my phone to check if I had missed something. A text. A voicemail. Anything. But there was nothing. The screen was empty except for a notification from the electric company and a spam message about a sale I didn't care about. In the morning, I made myself coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the calendar still hanging on the wall. The red circle around yesterday's date seemed to mock me. I had been so foolish to think he would remember. So foolish to believe that marriage wouldn't change him this much. I decided to call him. Not to make him feel guilty. Not to scold him. I just wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to know he was okay. Maybe he had been sick. Maybe something had happened. Maybe there was a reason. I dialed his number and waited. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. His voice came through the recording. Cheerful. Professional. "Hi, you've reached Daniel. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you. I hesitated. Then I said, "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. Just calling to say hello. Give me a call when you get a chance. I love you." I hung up and waited. Hours passed. He didn't call back. The next day, I tried again. This time, I sent a text message. I kept it simple. Light. I didn't want him to know how much yesterday had hurt. "Hi, Daniel. Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope everything is okay. Miss you." He responded 3 hours later. "Hey, Mom. Everything's fine. Just been really busy with work. Talk soon. Talk soon." Those 2 words felt empty. They felt like something you say to a coworker, not to your mother. I wanted to ask him if he knew what day it had been. I wanted to tell him that he forgot. That for 32 years he had never forgotten, and this year, the year after he got married, he finally did. But I didn't say any of that. I just replied, "Okay, sweetheart. Take care." A week went by, then 2 weeks, then a month. Daniel didn't call. I stopped reaching out as much because I was tired of being the only one trying. I was tired of feeling like a burden, like someone he had to respond to out of obligation rather than love. My sister called me one evening. She asked how I was doing. I told her I was fine. She didn't believe me. She knew me too well. She said, "Has Daniel called you yet?" I said, "No, not really." There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "I'm sorry. I really thought he would come around by now." I didn't know what to say to that. So I just said, "It's okay. He's busy. He has his own life now." But it wasn't okay. And saying it out loud made it hurt even more. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store. I was picking out vegetables when I heard a familiar laugh. I turned around and saw Daniel. He was standing by the dairy section with Melissa. They were holding hands. He was smiling at something she said. He looked happy, relaxed, like he didn't have a care in the world. I froze. Part of me wanted to walk over and say hello, to hug him, to ask him how he'd been. But another part of me felt paralyzed. What if he didn't want to see me? What if I interrupted something? What if Melissa got upset? I stood there, hidden behind a shelf, watching my own son like a stranger. Watching him laugh and talk and live his life without me in it. And then they walked toward the checkout line and left. He never saw me. He never knew I was there. I went home that day and cried. Really cried. For the first time since my birthday, I let myself feel everything I had been holding back. The hurt, the confusion, the loneliness. I cried because my son, my whole world, had moved on without me. And I didn't know how to accept that. I thought about calling him and telling him I saw him at the store. But what would I say? "I saw you today and you looked happy, but I felt invisible?" That sounded pathetic. That sounded like I was guilt-tripping him. And I didn't want to be that kind of mother. So I said nothing. I did nothing. I just existed in the quiet house that used to be filled with his laughter. I watered the plants he gave me for Mother's Day 3 years ago. I looked at the photos of us on the walls. I remembered what it felt like when he still needed me. Another month passed. Then another. My birthday came and went, and he forgot. Again. This time, I didn't wait by the phone. I didn't make excuses. I didn't hope. I just accepted it. My son had forgotten me. Not just my birthday, but me. The woman who raised him. The woman who sacrificed everything for him. The woman who loved him more than life itself. And the worst part was, I didn't know if he even realized it. I started filling my days with small routines. Things that kept me busy. Things that kept me from thinking too much. I joined a book club at the local library. I volunteered at the community center on Tuesdays. I took long walks in the park every morning. I tried to build a life that didn't revolve around waiting for my son to remember I existed. But no matter how busy I kept myself, there were moments when the loneliness crept back in. Moments when I would see a mother and son at the grocery store, laughing together, and I would feel a sharp pain in my chest. Moments when my phone would ring and my heart would leap, only to sink again when I saw it wasn't him. I stopped posting things on social media. I used to share photos of my garden, my cooking, little moments from my day. Daniel used to like them. He used to comment with a heart emoji or a simple "love you, Mom." But those stopped too. So I stopped posting. What was the point of sharing my life if the one person I wanted to share it with wasn't paying attention? One day, I was cleaning out the closet and I found a box of Daniel's old things. School projects, awards, drawings he made when he was little. I sat on the floor and went through each item slowly. There was a card he made me when he was 7. On the front, he had drawn the two of us holding hands under a rainbow. Inside, in wobbly handwriting, it said, "Dear Mom, you are the best mom in the world. I will never forget you. Love, Daniel." I held that card in my hands and I cried. I cried because that little boy meant every word he wrote. And I cried because somewhere along the way, that little boy grew up and forgot his promise. I thought about reaching out to Melissa. Maybe if I talked to her, I could understand what was happening. Maybe she didn't realize how much time had passed since Daniel last called me. Maybe she would encourage him to visit. But every time I thought about it, I stopped myself. I didn't want to seem desperate. I didn't want to create problems in their marriage. And deep down, I was afraid of what she might say. What if she told me that Daniel was happier without me around? What if she said I was too clingy? Too needy? What if she confirmed what I was already starting to believe, that I had become a burden he no longer wanted to carry? So I stayed silent. I suffered alone. Christmas came around again. This time, I didn't even bother inviting them. I knew they would go to Melissa's family. I spent Christmas Eve at my sister's house instead. She tried to make it special for me. She cooked a big meal. She played cheerful music. She gave me gifts wrapped in shiny paper. But I couldn't shake the sadness that hung over me like a heavy blanket. During dinner, her son asked, "Where's Daniel this year?" My sister quickly changed the subject. But the question stayed with me. Where was Daniel? And why wasn't he here? On Christmas morning, I received a text from him. It said, "Merry Christmas, Mom. Hope you're having a good day." No phone call. No video chat. Just a text. I stared at those words for a long time. I wanted to reply with everything I was feeling. I wanted to tell him how much I missed him. How much it hurt that he had become a stranger. How every holiday without him felt like a piece of my heart was missing. But instead, I just wrote back, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Love you." He didn't reply. January came. Cold and gray. I celebrated my birthday alone this year. I didn't circle it on the calendar. I didn't wait for a call. I just treated it like any other day. I made myself breakfast. I took a walk. I came home and read a book. And when the day ended, I felt nothing. Not sadness. Not anger. Just emptiness. 2 years had passed since Daniel got married. 2 years since he slowly started disappearing from my life. I had gone from talking to him every week to maybe once every 2 or 3 months. And even those conversations were brief and surface level. He would ask how I was doing. I would say fine. He would say he was busy. I would say I understood. And that was it. I stopped asking him to visit. I stopped suggesting dinners or family gatherings. I stopped trying to hold on to something that was clearly slipping away. It was exhausting. It was painful. And I was tired of being the only one fighting for our relationship. One evening, I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came over. She was an older woman, maybe 75, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She sat down next to me without saying anything at first. We just sat there together in silence. Then she said, "You've been looking sad lately." I tried to smile. "I'm okay." She looked at me knowingly. "Is it your boy?" I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. She patted my hand. Children grow up and sometimes they forget where they came from. It's not right, but it happens. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means they're lost right now. Her words were meant to comfort me. But they didn't. Because even if Daniel still loved me somewhere deep down, it didn't change the fact that I was alone. It didn't change the fact that he had forgotten me in every way that mattered. I decided to visit Daniel on a Saturday afternoon. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text to ask if it was a good time. I was afraid that if I did, he would find an excuse to say no. Or worse, he would tell me he was busy and we could meet some other time. A time that would never come. So I just got in my car and drove. The whole way there, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know how he would react. But I knew I couldn't keep living in this painful silence. It took me 40 minutes to reach their apartment building. It was a nice building. Modern. With big windows and a clean lobby. I had only been there once before, right after they moved in. Daniel had given me a quick tour while Melissa unpacked boxes in the bedroom. That was over a year ago. I parked my car and sat there for a moment. I looked up at the building and wondered which window was theirs. I wondered if Daniel was home. If he was happy. If he ever thought about me. I took a deep breath and got out of the car. I walked into the lobby and took the elevator to the 4th floor. My legs felt weak. My mouth was dry. I found their apartment number, 307, and stood in front of the door. I raised my hand to knock. Then I hesitated. What if this was a mistake? What if I was overreacting? What if he opened the door and looked at me like I was intruding? But I knocked anyway. 3 soft knocks. I waited. I heard footsteps inside. Then the door opened. It was Melissa. She looked surprised to see me. She was wearing casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she said, "Mrs. Carter." "Hi. We weren't expecting you." I tried to smile. "I'm sorry for dropping by unannounced. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by to see Daniel. Is he home?" She hesitated. Just for a second. But I noticed it. Then she said, "He's here. Come in." I stepped inside. The apartment looked different from the last time I'd seen it. More decorated. More lived in. There were photos on the walls. Most of them were of Daniel and Melissa. Wedding photos. Vacation photos. Photos of them with her family. I didn't see a single photo of me. Melissa closed the door behind me. "Have a seat. I'll get Daniel." She disappeared down the hallway. I sat on the edge of the couch, my hands folded in my lap. I looked around the room. Everything was neat and organized. There was a smell of coffee in the air. Soft music was playing from somewhere. A few moments later, Daniel appeared. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. His hair was a little messy, like he'd just woken up from a nap. When he saw me, his expression was hard to read. Surprise. Maybe confusion. Maybe something else. "Mom," he said. "What are you doing here?" Not, "Hi, Mom, it's so good to see you." Not, "What a nice surprise." Just, "What are you doing here?" Like I was someone who needed a reason to visit my own son. I stood up. "I wanted to see you. We haven't talked in so long." He glanced at Melissa, who was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. Then he looked back at me. "You could have called first. Would you have answered?" The words came out before I could stop them. Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's not fair, Mom." "Isn't it?" I felt something rising in my chest. Something I'd been pushing down for 2 years. "Daniel, you forgot my birthday. You forgot it last year and you forgot it again this year. Do you even know when my birthday is anymore?" He looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Mom, I've been really busy with work. I'm sorry I forgot." "It wasn't intentional." "It wasn't intentional," I repeated quietly. "You forgot me twice." "Not intentionally." "You stopped calling." "Not intentionally." "You stopped visiting." "Not intentionally." When did I become so easy to forget, Daniel? Melissa stepped forward. "Mrs. Carter, I think you're being a little unfair. Daniel works very hard. We both do. Life gets busy." I looked at her. Really looked at her. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just about Daniel being busy. This was about something else. Something I'd been too afraid to see. "You don't want me around, do you?" I said softly. Melissa's expression didn't change. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." I turned back to Daniel. "Does she not like me? Is that why you've been avoiding me?" Daniel ran his hand through his hair. He looked tired. Frustrated. "Mom, this isn't about Melissa. This is about me trying to build my own life. I can't always be running back home. I can't always be checking in. I have a wife now. I have responsibilities. And I'm not one of them anymore." My voice cracked. I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Daniel, I'm not asking you to choose between me and your wife. I'm not asking you to run back home every weekend. I'm just asking you to remember that I exist. To call me once in a while. To remember my birthday. Is that really too much to ask? He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, looking at the floor. And in that silence, I felt my heart break completely. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Daniel still wouldn't look at me. Melissa stood with her arms crossed, her face unreadable. And I stood there, waiting for my son to say something. Anything. Finally, he spoke. His voice was quiet, almost distant. Mom, I think you're being dramatic. I haven't forgotten you. I've just been living my life. That's what adults do. They move on. Move on. Those words hit me like a physical blow. Move on, I repeated. From what, Daniel? From me? Is that what I am now? Something you need to move on from. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? My voice was shaking now. Because for 2 years, I've watched you disappear. I've made excuses for you. I've told myself you were just busy. That you still cared. But standing here right now, I don't know if that's true anymore. Melissa stepped closer to Daniel. She placed her hand on his arm. A protective gesture. A claiming gesture. Mrs. Carter, I think maybe you should go. This conversation isn't going anywhere productive. I looked at her hand on his arm. Then I looked at Daniel. Waiting for him to tell her no. Waiting for him to defend me. Waiting for him to say something, anything, that showed I still mattered to him. But he didn't. He just stood there. Silent. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I picked up my purse from the couch. My hands were trembling. You're right, I said quietly. I should go. I walked toward the door. Every step felt heavy. Every step felt like goodbye. I put my hand on the doorknob and paused. I turned back one more time. Daniel, I said. Do you remember what you wrote in that card when you were 7? The one with the rainbow. He looked confused. What card? You drew us holding hands. You wrote that you would never forget me. My voice broke. I still have that card. I've kept it all these years. Because I believed you meant it. His face softened. Just a little. Just enough for me to see a glimpse of the boy he used to be. Mom, I love you, I said. I will always love you. But I can't keep chasing someone who doesn't want to be found. I can't keep breaking my own heart hoping you'll remember me. So I'm going to let you go now. I'm going to give you the space you clearly want. Mom, you're overreacting. I shook my head. No, sweetheart. I'm finally accepting reality. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. I heard Daniel say my name one more time, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I turned around, I would break down completely. And I needed to hold myself together just a little bit longer. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. The doors opened and I stepped inside. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of their apartment door. It was still open. Daniel was standing there, watching me leave. But he didn't come after me. The elevator descended. 4 floors felt like forever. When I reached the lobby, I walked out into the cold afternoon air. I got into my car and sat there for a moment. The tears finally came. Not loud, angry tears. Just quiet, broken ones. The kind of tears that come when you've lost something precious and you know you'll never get it back. I cried for the son I raised. The one who promised to never forget me. I cried for all the birthdays we would never share again. All the phone calls that would never come. All the moments I would spend alone, wondering where I went wrong. And then, when there were no more tears left, I started the car and drove home. I didn't look back. Thank you for listening to this story. What would you do if you were in this situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced something similar? Please share your story with me. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional life stories. Your support means everything. Until we meet again, take care and remember, you are never alone.